Well, let's face it, pain is pain, you know. It's one thing to sock somebody on the jaw. You know, it's one thing to choke somebody. It's one thing to get on top of them and start punching them. Yeah, you're gonna pretty much fuck them up pretty bad. It happens all over the country all the time. Right now, even early in the morning, someone is getting beat up, socked out. You know, more than one person, all over the place. You feel me? So this is kind of like, okay, this is fighting. A lot of people can do it. You really don't need too much training. You just need to grow up in a rough neighborhood and, you know, slap box when you're younger. Understand me? Most of it is self-explanatory. But when you start looking at it scientifically, and you say, this is my field of expertise. This is in the science department, we'll say. The martial arts science. I'm not talking about, you know, what they do with all those expensive machines trying to measure force and stuff. That stuff's interesting, you know. I think it's more like a sports science. But I'm talking about the science of actual combat. Not redefining martial arts, but keeping it for what it's originally for. Okay, martial arts was the merger of two groups of people. One, the artists who were always around in the temple. People who were very artistically minded, which they all were to a certain degree, but some of them were more than others. And some of them were more, you know, martial arts inclined. And then there are people who are kind of both, and you know how it goes. Anyway, they merged together and they made this art, you know, of fighting. It's also very flashy and impressive. It's going to send a powerful message to bandits that these guys are on some shit. Okay? But it had also come from India, where Africans had traveled to, or people from Africa for a long time who have fighting arts to go back thousands and thousands of years. So when you consider all this, what is Kung Fu but African fighting arts mixed with Asian, you know, Chinese, Tibet, etc. Minds that came together, the Shaolin Temple and the Shaoxi Forest. Okay, they came together and they scientifically looked at this thing. They said, what are these African fighting arts we've been working on all these years? Of course, they didn't call it that, right? They called it their own because they don't have a recorded history for the most part. Not in the classic sense, if you will. So they were refining it. And they met with the great minds who were artists. And they said, well, make it like this. And they started talking about how temples are built, how statues are made. And they started applying that to the moves. They were like the painter's stroke, you know, his every stroke. You know, the martial arts, every strike. Until he's older. You see that? The painter's stroke. The martial artist's strike. And so we have it. This is where Kung Fu came from. Very brilliant, very beautifully crafted. I have no problem with it. You go back to the source. And who are these guys? Big black guys. Eyes fixed on their prey. Years of bloody skirmishes. forging the most violent group of people on the face of the earth. And that is my opinion. Everything else is fact. They start discussing, how are we going to refine these battle arts to keep these fucking Berbers at bay? To keep the Semites at bay? To keep the Nubians, the Libyans, the Sea People? We are going to thrive in spite of the fact that our location puts us in the crosshairs of a lot of armies. We need only the best fighting arts, because on many of our campaigns, we're going to be traveling far away. And the king himself, the pharaoh, is going to be there as well. So what are the fighting arts for the average soldier? What are the fighting arts and the insights of the master guard of the pharaoh? So after years of battling, there was a definite pecking order in the ancient world. It went the Nubians, the Egyptians, and then everyone else. In Nubia, you had these dancers who had the potent, pure, uncut, one might argue, African fighting philosophy, from the dance forms, the reenactments, everything. The pure Egyptian religion, I might argue. However, in Egypt, there was a lot of other influences. I'm not saying for better or for worse, but certainly they recruited a lot of Nubians into their army. They absorbed a lot of Nubians, some of them already living in Egypt, some of them imported from Nubia. Great warriors, men of skill, men fighting for honor. And they forged the pecking order with the Nubians on top. Mantu arts were the Nubian arts. Horus arts were connected to them. The Semites had their arts. The Sea Peoples. So on. Hittites and up into Europe and Asia. But these guys weren't fucking around. These were the Muhammad Alis of ancient combat. These were the Mike Tysons of ancient combat. These were the Chukwu Emekas of ancient combat. These were the types of guys who could stand up in a crowded fucking auditorium, on stage, and say, I offer 20 grand to anyone who could fucking beat me right now. An auditorium, huge auditorium full of martial artists. These were the guys. Anyone could beat me at sparring. And they outmaneuvered him. They showed him where they could have struck him. These are those guys. Okay? The personal guard of the pharaoh, including Egyptians, of course. The Nubian kind of special forces that did the brunt of the work in the main army. The Egyptian, African combat arts. What the Professor Obi, refers to as the African traditions, African martial arts traditions. Absolutely correct. The Nubian martial arts traditions, there's more than one. the Egyptians and their various communities. Because the Nubians were, you know, a confederacy of many different African tribes, just like the Egyptians were an empire based around large centers and cities, called centers as well. Within its borders, that had a lot of different African fighting traditions as well. But, when you look at the Temple of Horus and the Mantu traditions, these are the bells that ring the loudest that we know of, and the ones that resonate with me. So this is how we got to this point. Pure warfare. And you see a lot of people saying a lot of stupid shit because they don't get it, They don't get it. When you want to fight with somebody, with the knuckles, certain body types have the advantage. When you want to wrestle, when you want to do actual war arts, When the guy said the forms and the techniques